As South Africa's apartheid regime fought to cling on to power in the latter half of the 20th century, it routinely imprisoned, tortured and murdered its opponents. Controversially, many of those crimes went unpunished in the years of reconciliation that followed, but the families of victims have never given up hopes of justice. This is the remarkable story of one man's battle to hold his father's killers to account.
It's late at night on the 27th of June 1985 in a remote region of apartheid South Africa. 4 young activists are returning home to Kraddock, their tiny town in the Eastern Cape. They're followed by security police, forced off the road and abducted. They'll never be seen alive again. 36 years later, the families of these men still wait for their murderers and those who ordered their deaths to be brought to justice.
My father fought Calata, Matthew Goniwe, Sparum Konto and Sitalo Mhlauli. They were killed in 1985. These files here are apartheid basic documents. It proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that my father was killed by the apartheid government.
The deaths of the Kraddock Four, as they came to be known, caused local and international outrage. 60,000 people attended their funeral.
They hadn't expected that the revolution would actually come from the middle of the Karoo in a small town like this.
Fearing the anger would spread, the state clamped down on black South Africans.
The government banned the funeral, and this is my first memory of my dad then. It's the funeral. So later that afternoon, the government then declared a state of emergency.
The apartheid state didn't, however, find anyone culpable of the murders of the Kraddock Four. But a decade later, after white rule came to an end, a truth commission was set up to investigate crimes like these. It was dubbed the TRC. NOMONDE Calata, Lukhanyo's mother, was one of the first to testify at the TRC.
And I was still 20 at the time, and I couldn't handle this. So I was taken to Nyami's place, and when I got there, Nyami was crying terribly.
The testimony of victims was soon followed by that of perpetrators. One of them was the man who personally killed Fort Calata, Eric Taylor, a former security policeman.
I hit Mr. Calata from behind with this heavy iron object, approximately where the head joins the neck. He fell to the ground. I was under the impression that he was unconscious. Then the other black members stabbed him with knives.
I was 3 years old. You know, my mother was pregnant with a little girl. My older sister was 9 years old. My mother was 26. My father was 29.
Shockingly, Fort Calata's murder is just one of hundreds from the apartheid era that have yet to be prosecuted.
The question is, Mr. Swanepoel, was there intelligence?
Howard VARNEY, a human rights lawyer, has been pursuing these cases for decades.
The TRC handed over a list of some 400 cases as far back as the late 1990s, and next to nothing has happened since those days. Families, of course, have been pushing for answers, particularly in cases where amnesty was denied.
Mr. Taylor, have a look at paragraph 4.
Eric Taylor was one of those who was denied amnesty, in part because he wouldn't reveal who'd given him his orders.
If this is true, a pack of lies has been told to this committee.
But the state chose not to prosecute men like Eric Taylor or those above him.
They chose not to because a political decision was taken at the highest political level post-2002. And that decision was there will be no justice in any of these cases. Prosecutors and police investigators were instructed to simply don tools.
Lukhanyo's been seeking justice for his father's death since the TRC's work ended back in 2003. Those attempts have been thwarted at every turn.
The Craddock 4 is a case in point. The investigation docket disappeared out of the offices of the National Prosecuting Authority. Now, typically when a docket disappears, we know why it's disappeared. It's because somebody doesn't want to see justice done in that case. And the fact that it has disappeared from the headquarters of the National Prosecuting Authority is deeply alarming. And yet we see no alarm being expressed by the National Prosecuting Authority.
We had come to the Cape Town Central Police Station to come and open a charge of theft against the National Prosecuting Authority.
When Mr. Calata tried to open up a case, he was ignored for more than a year. He begged the investigating officers to look into why that docket was removed and has never been found.
Once we came here, we were then told that we can't really open the case.
We had to write to the Commissioner of Police and say that if you won't open up a docket, we'll see you in court.
Finally, after intervention from our lawyers and from the office of the Commissioner and the Minister, we were at least able to open a case.
If one looks at the little progress that has been made over the last few years, it's only been made because the families have made an effort, not because the police have decided to take up the cases.
We're not having any luck with the National Prosecuting Authority.
Despite many requests, neither the Prosecuting Authority or the Department of Justice granted us interviews.
What evidence, concrete evidence, do you have that there was high-level political interference?
Well, the concrete evidence comes from PIKOLI himself.
VUSI PIKOLI was the head of South Africa's National Prosecuting Authority, also known as the MPA, from 2005 to 2007.
The direct interference that I experienced was when the minister, Ms. Bridget Mabandla, she thought that we were not proceeding with prosecutions.
Bridget Mabandla was the Minister of Justice at the time. She declined to be interviewed, but in a statement said that PIKOLI's claim in relation to my service is untrue. The prosecutions in question were against two senior apartheid officials, ADRIAAN VLOK, former Minister of Law and Order, and Johan van der Merwe, former Commissioner of Police. They were accused of the attempted murder of Reverend Frank Chikane, a high-profile anti-apartheid activist.
Were you under pressure from the government to give light sentences for the attempted murder of Reverend Frank Chikane?
No, I wasn't under pressure for light sentences. I was under pressure not to even go ahead with the case itself. That's the pressure that I felt. They got, what, 10-year suspended sentences?
Why was there pressure on you not to pursue these cases from the ANC government?
Well, that's fairly obvious. There was a fear within the ANC. Prosecuting the apartheid generals would also mean members of the ANC also being prosecuted.
The liberation movement, even though they fought for just cause, had been involved in gross human rights violations.
Ole BUBENZER, a German lawyer and legal researcher, investigated why, after the TRC ended, prosecutions have stalled.
The ANC abroad had a structure called the National Executive Committee, the NEC. Very high-ranking ANC officials all were part. Mbeki, Zuma, and so on. And there is very strong evidence for drawing a direct line from orders and instructions given by the NEC. There was a landmine campaign, for instance, in the 80s. The liberation movement planted landmines on rural streets. Obviously, a lot of civilians died from that as well, or were harmed. There was the Church Street bombing of the South African Air Force headquarters in Pretoria in the 80s, which was also directly instructed by the NEC.
19 died and 217 were wounded, many of them civilians. Then BUBENZER told us just how much influence the former apartheid establishment still wielded in the new South Africa.
The lawyer acting on behalf of the accused in the Chicane matter made a direct call to contacts in the government.
That lawyer is Jan Wagner, a former state attorney for the old regime, who's since represented many former apartheid security forces.
And then all of a sudden, the whole prosecution was suspended. They, the security police side, was able to pressure the government into suspension by using information they had apparently on crimes committed by the liberation movement, and use this as a very effective tool to pressure the government into stopping this prosecution, for instance.
Government did not want that case to go ahead. To have even been able to get a plea bargain, it was a big struggle. The least that we were able to do was to make sure that they are going to have criminal records. That's the best that we could do under the circumstances.
In 2007, VLOK and Van der Merwe both received suspended sentences. Since then, there have been no further apartheid-era prosecutions.
The former security police side even collected investigation dockets with evidence against the ANC, preparing cases, having this as a pressure tool against the government, and it worked.
Let me lay some of these things out for you here.
This official reluctance to prosecute the crimes of the past has left the pursuit of justice in the hands of ordinary citizens like Lukhanyo. Over the years, he's accumulated a mountain of evidence, which implicates not just the trigger pullers, but also those who gave them their orders. One of them, says Lukhanyo, was ADRIAAN VLOK, the man prosecuted by PIKOLI.
On the 5th of June, ADRIAAN VLOK visits KRISH, takes a drive to where we stayed. And my mum remembers thinking, oh, that's VLOK, because she was looking at him through the window. On the 6th of June, VLOK chaired a meeting of the Eastern Province Joint Management Center. And then on the 7th of June, this military signal is sent to the State Security Council. This signal recommends the permanent removal from society of Matthew Goniwe, Mbulelo Goniwe, and Fort Calata.
Permanently removed from society. For decades, apartheid officials have steadfastly denied that the use of this phrase was in order to kill. This despite a 1989 judicial inquiry concluding that it amounted to a death warrant, sanctioned at the highest level. We interviewed ADRIAAN VLOK, who's now in his 80s. We asked him if he was involved in planning the killings of the Cradock Four.
I really had no authority to do these sort of things. I went to these areas. I asked the security forces to give me a briefing, what is going on, what is the situation. But I could not give them instructions to kill people. My authority stretched as far as I said, lock them up.
But later in the interview, VLOK made a startling admission.
There was definitely an order that found its way into the State Security Council saying they must be permanently removed from society. What did that mean?
To remove a person from the society, no, you know, we in the State Security Council, we were very careful not to tell, not to say, and to make a note and to have in the minutes to kill anybody. So we would say, remove a person from the society, remove him. And, you know, nobody said kill him. But I thought probably it was meant, if you can't solve the problem by removing the guy, then you could kill him.
You thought that then?
Not consciously. But afterwards, thinking back, I must admit that I realized this was a possibility.
None of these things would have escaped someone like former President F.W. de Klerk. There was actual proof of his attendance to some of those State Security Council meetings.
F.W. de Klerk was South Africa's last white president. His foundation didn't respond to our interview requests, but he's previously strenuously denied allegations that he sanctioned or knew about any political murders.
I have never been part of any decision taken by Cabinet, the State Security Council, or any committee authorizing or instructing the commission of such gross violations of human rights.
But without actual prosecutions, the full truth behind such killings may never come to light. What has come to light, though, is that the ANC government and its apartheid-era counterparts held secret negotiations intended to ensure that such prosecutions would never happen.
The talk started after the main part of the PRC was over in 1998 until about 2003. On the side of the police, I spoke with the former National Commissioner, Johan van der Merwe. Even FW de Klerk acted on behalf of the former police, the same as ADRIAAN VLOK. On the side of the government, there were high-ranking government officials. Among others, Thabo Mbeki, first as vice president, then as president, SADF generals. They engaged in talks starting with Zuma, Jacob Zuma. There was a great interest of the government to avoid trials. This required that they had to act quite secretly.
So they put together a team of people called the Amnesty Task Team, top secret body. All their documents were classified secret. And this Amnesty Task Team was given the following direction: come up with recommendations to somehow guarantee impunity for people on all sides.
The secret amnesty arrangement might well have succeeded if VARNEY and other human rights lawyers hadn't intervened.
We opposed most of those applications on the basis that it was held secretly. Until we kicked up a fuss, we didn't even know who was applying. Victims themselves couldn't make any representations.
But in the face of mounting legal pressure, applied over decades, the MPA might now finally be forced to act.
We have had to apply pressure, constant pressure. Today, I'm happy to report that the Office of the Deputy Public Prosecutor is now guiding the investigation into the murders of the Cradock Four.
Today, Lukhanyo's joining a call with the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations, or DPCI.
I need to take notes. We're speaking now is Cliffy Marion, who's the lead investigator that was appointed by the Foundation for Human Rights.
That's a human rights organization representing Lukhanyo and his family. The murder docket's been shelved for so long that Marion must now rebrief state investigators about their own case.
Then the DPP asked for statements which must be filed to confirm whether all known suspects, for example, are alive or dead. Johan Martin van Zyl is dead and Harold Snyman is dead. One of the assassins, I'm given to understand he's still alive. Eric Alexander Taylor, who is still alive.
But when we tried to track down Eric Taylor via his son, we unearthed some bad news.
Dear Eldon, I'm a reporter with Al Jazeera, and we would love to talk to Eric and wondered if you could put us in touch. Eric, my father or brother? Your father, sir. He passed away in November 2016. That's from Eldon Taylor.
On Facebook, Eric Taylor's profile is still active. About a year before his death, it shows him cradling what looks like his grandchild.
It looks like he's smiling. And someone says, you look like a father that knows about changing nappies, making a bottle, and breaking your child's wind. Yet my son knows absolutely nothing about his grandfather. I struggle to raise my son today. There are many days when I have no clue as to whether what I'm doing in raising my son, whether I'm doing the right thing as a father. Because this bastard here took my father away from me. Right? Here he is. holding his grandson or his grandchild. Eric Taylor and everyone that had anything to do with my father's death, they must all be investigated, they must all be prosecuted, and they must all be convicted for taking my father away from me.
Thank you.
After all that's transpired, Lukhanyo decides it's time for him to travel back to Cradock, his childhood home. It's back there that his family's history and that of the ANC are deeply entwined. His great-grandfather, James Arthur Calata, was an ANC luminary.
In 1936, he was elected Secretary General within the African National Congress. By the time he handed over power in 1949, the ANC was in such good standing that they could then kick off the defiance campaigns of the 1950s. We're on our way to Cradock to go and update my mother. There's some activities that are beginning to show progress. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right. Yeah.
So at least there's something. There's some progress.
It's been so long, but it's just something that I can't work out and get peace with. Can't be until the day I know what happened that day. Then I will maybe be myself again and start living a normal life like anyone.
We're gonna have another meeting and then we'll get an update from the Hawks again to see how far they've gone with the investigation then, and then we'll see.
In the morning, the family visit Fort's grave. The news of Taylor's death has affected them deeply.
If we could have Eric Taylor standing there telling the whole truth about what happened that evening, that alone would have made me another person, would have changed my life, would have taken me out of the grief and the mourning that doesn't stop within me. When the ANC came into power, we were really having a big hope that things is going to change. But unfortunately, it's so painful. I don't even think they know who the Cradock 4 is.
We asked the ANC to address this issue of delayed prosecutions.
Why has it taken so long?
It's you know, there's no reason, there's no explanation for that. You know, it could have been lack of focus, it could have been bad planning, not being prioritized properly.
KRISH NAIDOO, the ANC lawyer we interviewed, denied any knowledge of a secret amnesty arrangement.
I am not aware of any agreement regarding non-prosecution of perpetrators of apartheid-era crimes. Some matters would have slipped through the cracks, and this would have been one of them, I presume.
He also told us that the ANC has now, after 18 years, recently started supporting prosecutions.
ANC is now fully on board. We've worked since last year. We're doing about investigating 5 matters at the moment in 3 different provinces. We're hoping to move that along to about 15 this year.
On his final day in Cradock, Lukhanyo visits, for the first time, a memorial set up in honor of the Cradock 4.
This is really so heartbreaking. Letters are missing. Okay. So it's EUW Goniwe, Calata, Rome Konto, and Elo Mhlauli. Where are the rest of their letters? Where are the rest of their names? What is this and why is it laying here? I mean, why is it laying here? You know, we told the ANC, we told them that we could not trust them. We told them that we could not entrust our father's legacy to them. Honestly, I didn't think it would look this bad.
Lukhanyo Calata has an uphill battle. It's always difficult to investigate a case that is decades old because witnesses have died, suspects have died, memories fade, and so much cover-up has taken place.
But Lukhanyo remains resolute.
The legacy of the KRISH Fall is so much more than just power for us. It's more about honoring the lives and the legacies of people who gave their lives for us to be free.
So long as families want justice to be done, then justice needs to be done because the rights of those families need to be vindicated. And it's not a question about just letting bygones be bygones. If we are happy to let several hundred murders be swept under the carpet, then what's to say that we wouldn't be happy to do that again in the future?